My name is Evelyn Hart, a single mother, a designer who once walked away from a rising career to raise 3 children, triplets, whose father disappeared the moment he found out I was pregnant. For 7 years, I lived in silence, burying my pain so my children could grow up in peace. Until one day, a wedding invitation arrived with a single line that shattered everything I'd kept hidden. Does truth have a place at a wedding? And guess what? I brought my children to the wedding of the man who had denied them, not for revenge, but to make space for the truth. Before I share the rest of my story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Hit the like button and subscribe if you've ever had to rise for your family. Trust me, you're going to want to hear what happened next. The wedding invitation arrived on a Tuesday morning, slipping through my mail slot like a ghost from another life. I almost threw it away. Another piece of junk mail addressed to the wrong cabin. But something about the cream-colored envelope, the weight of expensive paper between my fingers, made me pause. My hands trembled as I read the embossed names. Julian Monroe and Lana Blake request the honor of your presence. Julian. After 7 years of silence, his name still had the power to make my chest tighten. I was about to toss it when I noticed the handwriting on the back. A single line in blue ink that seemed to pulse with meaning. Does truth have a place at a wedding? Yes. The coffee mug slipped from my other hand, shattering on the kitchen floor. Brown liquid spread across the white tiles like a map of all the places I'd been broken. Mom? Emma's voice drifted from the living room where she sat with her brothers, working on their morning art projects. You okay? Fine, sweetheart. My voice came out steadier than I felt. Just dropped something. I stared at the invitation again. Aspen seemed so far from Santa Barbara, from the glittering world where Julian now lived with his Hollywood starlet. Here in our small cabin by the lake, surrounded by snow-capped mountains and the kind of quiet that only comes from true isolation, I'd built a different life. A smaller life, maybe, but one that belonged entirely to us. The triplets, Emma, Noah, and Lucas, had never asked about their father. At 7, they seemed content with our little family of 4, with art supplies scattered across every surface and classical music playing softly while I worked on my design sketches. I'd stopped taking big clients years ago, working only on small local projects that let me be home by 3:30 when the school bus arrived. But this invitation, someone wanted me to know. Someone thought I should be there. I bent to clean up the broken mug, and a shard caught my palm. A thin line of blood appeared, and I watched it well up, remembering another morning 7 years ago when everything had shattered just as suddenly. The twins were building a fort in the living room, their blonde heads bent together in concentration. Emma was directing, as usual, while Noah and Lucas followed her lead. They had Julian's bone structure, but my temperament. Thoughtful, creative, prone to getting lost in their own worlds. We need one more chair, Emma announced, for when Daddy comes. My breath caught. They'd never mentioned a father before. Why 5 chairs? I asked carefully, kneeling beside their construction. Because, Lucas said matter-of-factly, families in books always have 5 people. 2 parents and 3 kids. The invitation burned in my back pocket. Somewhere in Santa Barbara, Julian was planning a wedding that would fill all the seats at his table. And here, in our cabin, my children were building spaces for someone who didn't even know their names. That night, after tucking them in, I sat on the porch, despite the cold. The mountains stood like guardians around our little valley, and I'd always found comfort in their permanence. But tonight, they felt like walls. I pulled out my phone and did something I'd sworn I'd never do. I searched for Julian Monroe. The images loaded slowly on our rural internet. There he was, arm around Lana Blake at some charity gala. Another photo at a groundbreaking ceremony. His smile was the same, confident, charming, entirely focused on the camera. The man who'd once held my hand through 17 hours of labor, who'd cried when the doctor said triplets, who'd promised we'd figure it all out together. The man who'd left a note on our kitchen counter 6 months later. I can't do this anymore. The sadness is drowning us both. The memory hit like a physical blow, and I closed the browser. But the damage was done. After 7 years of carefully constructed peace, The past had found its way back to my door. Inside, I could hear Lucas talking in his sleep. He always did when he was processing something. Emma had left her drawings scattered on the kitchen table, all of them featuring families of 5. Noah's violin sat in its case by the door, waiting for tomorrow's lesson. We'd built something here, something real and good and whole. So why did that empty 5th chair suddenly feel like it was taking up all the space in the room? Sleep didn't come that night. Instead, memories I'd locked away came flooding back, each one sharper than broken glass. I remembered the weight of Julian's absence that first morning after he left. How I'd woken up at 5 a.m. to feed the babies, my body still soft and aching from the C-section, reaching for him in the dark. The cold sheets where he should have been. The note on the kitchen counter, his handwriting rushed as if he couldn't leave fast enough. The babies had been crying. They always cried in the early morning. And I'd stood there, reading those 11 words over and over while milk leaked through my nightgown. I can't do this anymore. The sadness is drowning us both. The sadness. As if my postpartum depression was something I'd chosen. A pool I'd decided to jump into for fun. I'd called him 47 times that day. The number was burned into my memory because I'd counted each unanswered ring another small death. By evening, his phone was disconnected. 6 months later, I saw him in People magazine. Real estate mogul Julian Monroe steps out with Emmy winner Lana Blake. The article gushed about their whirlwind romance, how they'd met at a charity auction. The timeline meant he'd been seeing her while I was still pregnant, while I was throwing up every morning, and he was supposedly at early meetings. But the worst part, the part that still made me want to scream, was the interview quote, "I'm finally ready for real love." My past relationship taught me what I don't want. Drama, instability, someone who couldn't handle my success. I'd been reduced to a lesson learned, a cautionary tale in his journey to happiness. The doorbell rang at 6 a.m., pulling me from the spiral of memories. Jonah stood on my porch, looking irritatingly awake for someone who'd driven through the night from Denver. "You look like hell," my half-brother said, pushing past me into the kitchen. "Thanks. That's exactly what every woman wants to hear." He started making coffee with the efficiency of someone who'd spent years as a field reporter. "Got your text. You want to tell me why you're suddenly interested in Julian Monroe after 7 years of radio silence?" I showed him the invitation. He whistled low. "Someone stirring the pot. Any idea who?" "None." I watched him work, grateful for his familiar presence. I wasn't going to do anything about it, but then the kids, I told him about the 5 chairs, about Emma's casual mention of when Daddy comes. His face darkened. They don't know? What was I supposed to tell them? That their father took one look at them on the ultrasound and went pale? That he spent the entire pregnancy looking for exits? My voice cracked. That he made me sign papers saying I'd never reveal he was their father because he needed to protect his business interests. Jonah set a mug in front of me. "You signed those under duress. Your mom was dying. You needed the money." "I know." The coffee was too hot, but I drank it anyway, needing the burn. But it wasn't just about the money. Part of me thought if I gave him space, he'd come back. That once the babies were here, once he saw them... "Evelyn." Jonah's voice was gentle. "He's never even asked their names, has he?" The tears came then, 7 years of them. Hot and angry and absolutely pointless. Because no, Julian had never asked if they were boys or girls, if they were healthy, if they looked like him. He'd sent a check every month through his lawyer, each one feeling more like hush money than child support. "I'm going to help you," Jonah said when my sobs finally quieted. "Whatever you need. Opposition research is kind of my thing, remember? I don't want revenge." The words surprised me, but they were true. I want my kids to know they weren't some mistake that drove their father away. They deserve better than his absence. Jonah studied me with those sharp journalist eyes. "You sure about that? Because once you open this door, there's no closing it." From upstairs, I heard the sound of small feet. Emma, always the first one up. In minutes, the house would fill with noise and need and the beautiful chaos of 3 7-year-olds. "They're already building chairs for ghosts," I said. "At least this way, they'll know why the seat stays empty." But even as I said it, I wondered if knowing the truth was really better than believing in possibilities. The video found me 3 weeks later. shared by a well-meaning client who didn't know my history. "Isn't this your ex?" she'd written. "My daughter's obsessed with Lana Blake. I should have deleted it. Should have protected myself the way I'd been doing for 7 years." Instead, I clicked play. It was a daytime talk show, all bright lights and artificial enthusiasm. Julian sat beside Lana, his hand on her knee, that practiced smile never wavering. He looked good. Success agreed with him. The silver at his temples was new, distinguished. His suit probably cost more than my car. "So tell us," the host gushed. "How did you two lovebirds meet?" Julian leaned forward, all charm. "It was fate. I'd just come out of a difficult situation. My first love, actually. She was troubled, you know? Accusations, instability. When you're building something big, you need a partner who can handle the pressure." My hands clenched so hard my nails bit into my palms. "She actually tried to trap me with a pregnancy," he continued, shaking his head sadly. "When that didn't work, she tried to destroy my reputation, cost me millions in my first company. But you know what? I'm grateful. Without that lesson, I never would have found Lana." The host made sympathetic noises while Lana squeezed his hand, and I sat frozen, watching my life get rewritten for daytime television. Trapped him. I'd been on birth control. The pregnancy was a shock to both of us, or so I'd thought. Tried to destroy him? I'd signed away my rights to protect him, had moved across the country to give him space. But the worst part was the casual cruelty of it, the way he'd erased not just me but our children. In his version, they didn't even exist. The video ended with wedding talk, Lana showing off her ring, the host cooing over their fairy tale romance. And something inside me, something I'd carefully tended for 7 years, finally cracked. I called in sick to my afternoon consultation and drove to the school. The secretary looked surprised, but didn't question when I said I needed to pick up the kids early. They piled into the car, chattering about their day. Emma had won the spelling bee. Noah had been chosen for the advanced music program. Lucas had defended a smaller kid from a bully and gotten a stern talking to about using words, not fists. My babies. My brilliant, kind, fierce babies. "Where are we going?" Emma asked as I drove past our usual turn. "On an adventure," I said. "I need to tell you guys something important." I parked at the overlook where we sometimes came to watch sunsets. The valley spread below us, our tiny town nestled between mountains like a secret the earth was keeping. "You know how some families look different?" I began, my heart hammering. "Some have 2 moms, some have 2 dads, some have grandparents raising kids." They nodded, curious but not concerned. "Our family is different too. You have a dad, but he had to go away before you were born." "Is he dead?" Lucas asked, always direct. "No, he made choices that took him far away from us." "Why?" Noah's voice was small. "How did you explain cowardice to children? How did you tell them their father had looked at their ultrasound and seen burden instead of blessing?" "Sometimes adults make mistakes," I said carefully. "Sometimes they get scared and don't know how to be brave. It doesn't mean anything about you. You 3 are the best things that ever happened to me." Emma was quiet for a long moment. Then, "Is that why you look sad sometimes? When you think we're not watching?" My throat closed. I'd tried so hard to hide it. The grief that still sometimes caught me off guard. Not grief for Julian, that had burned away years ago. But grief for my children. For the father they should have had. "Yeah, baby, sometimes I get sad that he's missing out on knowing you." "Well," Lucas declared, "that's his loss." And there it was. The awakening I hadn't known I needed. Not from a misaddressed invitation or a talk show full of lies, but from my 7-year-old son's simple certainty. It was Julian's loss. And maybe it was time he knew exactly what he'd thrown away. That night, I pulled the invitation from where I'd hidden it and really looked at it. Santa Barbara. December 10th, 3 weeks away. "Does Truth have a place at a wedding?" the mysterious message asked. I reached for my phone and texted Jonah. "I'm going, and I'm taking the kids." Because Truth always had a place. The question was whether Julian Monroe was ready to face it. Santa Barbara in December was nothing like Aspen. Palm trees swayed in warm breezes where I was used to pine and snow. The ocean stretched endlessly, a different kind of beautiful than our mountain lakes. Jonah had booked us a small hotel away from the wedding venue. "Reconnaissance," he'd said. "Always have an exit strategy." The kids pressed their faces to the car windows, amazed by the ocean, the wealth, the sheer differentness of it all. I'd told them we were taking a special trip, that there was something Mommy needed to do. They trusted me completely, which only made the weight heavier. The wedding was at Castello di Vallona, a faux Italian castle perched on cliffs above the Pacific. Of course, Julian would choose something so ostentatious. The boy who'd grown up in a trailer park in Nevada, now playing prince in a castle by the sea. I'd loved that about him once. His hunger to rise, to be more. I'd understood it because I'd felt it too. Two scholarship kids at Columbia, determined to prove we belonged. We'd spent hours in the library planning our empire. Monroe and Hart Designs, we'd call it. He'd develop the properties, I'd design the interiors. A power couple in the making. Funny how dreams could become weapons when aimed at your heart. Holy shit, Jonah whispered, pulling up the event details on his tablet. This wedding has its own hashtag, and, Jesus, Evelyn, they're calling it a charity event. Proceeds go to some foundation for family values. I laughed, sharp and bitter. Family values, from the man who abandoned his 3 infants. There's more. Jonah's face was grim. The foundation specifically helps single mothers. The irony is so thick you could choke on it. That night, while the kids slept, I sat on the hotel balcony and thought about facades. How Julian had always been good at them. The successful businessman who'd actually barely graduated. The devoted partner who'd been texting other women while I was in the hospital. The family man who couldn't bear the messiness of actual family. But I'd built my own facades too, hadn't I? The contented, single mother. The woman who'd chosen solitude. The designer who'd stepped back from success for work-life balance. All of it carefully constructed to hide the truth. That I'd been broken by his leaving. That some days I could barely get out of bed. That I'd given up my career not for balance, but because I couldn't bear to be in rooms where people might know our story. My phone buzzed. An unknown number, but I recognized the area code. Julian's lawyer. Ms. Hart, we understand you're in Santa Barbara. Mr. Monroe wants to remind you of the terms of your agreement. Which terms? I kept my voice steady. The ones where he pays me to pretend his children don't exist? Or the ones where I'm supposed to be grateful for his silence money? Any attempt to disrupt tomorrow's proceedings will result in legal action. I have no intention of disrupting anything. True enough, what I planned was more subtle than disruption. After hanging up, I found myself laughing. He knew I was here. Of course he did. Julian always had people watching, reporting, but he was scared enough to have his lawyer call. Good. The next morning, I dressed carefully. Not the designer clothes from my old life. Those had been sold long ago. Just a simple navy dress, the one I wore to parent-teacher conferences. I braided Emma's hair and helped the boys with their ties. They looked perfect, these 3 little humans who carried half of Julian's DNA and all of my heart. Remember? I told them as we drove toward the castle. We're just going to drop off a present, a quick visit, then we'll go to the beach. Can we see the bride? Emma asked. I bet she's pretty like a princess. Maybe, I said, though my chest tightened at the thought. Lana Blake. I'd researched her too, unable to help myself. 32 years old, trained at Juilliard, won Emmy for a supporting role before her career stalled. 3 broken engagements before Julian. A history of dating powerful men who could advance her career. Part of me wanted to hate her, but mostly I felt pity, warning, this strange sisterhood of women who'd believed Julian Monroe's promises. We parked far from the main entrance. I could see the tents being erected, florists carrying impossible arrangements, a string quartet rehearsing Pachelbel's canon, everything pristine and perfect and false as a movie set. Okay, loves, I said, turning to my children, let's go deliver our gift. Because that's what truth was, really. A gift wrapped in pain, but necessary all the same. The castle loomed above us, all Italian pretense and American excess. And somewhere inside, Julian Monroe was preparing to promise forever to another woman. I wondered if he'd practiced his vows in the mirror, the way he used to practice his investor pitches. If he'd chosen his words for maximum impact, calculated the pauses for effect. I wondered if he'd thought, even once, about the family he'd left behind in the cold. The side entrance was supposed to be locked. But Jonah had done his homework. A cousin of a friend worked catering, and doors had been left conveniently open. We moved through service corridors that smelled of gardenias and money. The kids stayed close, sensing the importance of our stealth mission. My hands shook as I carried the wrapped box, its contents weighing far more than paper should. "Evelyn?" I froze. That voice, smoky, trained for the stage. Lana Blake stood in the hallway, resplendent in a silk robe, her hair in hot rollers. Up close, she was even more beautiful than her photos. But there was something in her eyes. A tightness, a watchfulness I recognized. "You're Evelyn." Not a question. "He showed me your picture, said to watch out for you." "I'm not here to cause trouble." The words came out steadier than I felt. "I just have a wedding gift." She looked at the box, then at my children. Her face went through several expressions: confusion, calculation, then something like understanding. "These are Emma, Noah, and Lucas," I said simply. "They're 7. The math was easy. Her perfectly made-up face crumbled slightly. "He said there was no baby. Said you lied about being pregnant to trap him." "There were 3 babies." I kept my voice gentle. This woman wasn't my enemy, I realized. She was my future ghost. "And I have the birth certificates to prove it." Lana swayed slightly. Emma, ever the caretaker, stepped forward. "Are you okay, miss? You look like you need to sit down." Lana stared at my daughter, and I saw the moment she recognized Julian in the shape of her eyes, the set of her jaw. "Oh, God." "Mom," Lucas tugged my dress. "Is she the princess bride?" "Yes, baby. She looks sad for a princess." Lana laughed, sharp and broken. "Out of the mouths of babes." She looked at me, really looked. "He's done this before, hasn't he? Left women with pieces of himself they can't put down?" I could have lied. Could have twisted the knife. Instead, I handed her the box. "This is for you. Open it when you're ready, or don't. But you should know what you're marrying." Her hands trembled as she took it. "Why now, after all this time?" "Because he went on television and erased them." My voice cracked. "Because my children are building places for a father who doesn't know their names. Because you deserve to know who you're promising forever to." "Lana?" A sharp voice from down the hall. Julian's mother, Margaret, appeared like an avenging angel in St. John. "What are you—" She stopped dead when she saw me. Then her gaze dropped to my children, and I watched the color drain from her carefully Botoxed face. "Dear God," she whispered. "They look just like him at that age." "Hello, Margaret." I was proud of how calm I sounded. "Lovely to see you again." She'd been the one to suggest the abortion, back when we'd first found out. 3 babies would ruin Julian's image, she'd said. Better to start fresh later when he was established. She'd offered to pay for it, had made appointments I'd never kept. Now she stared at her grandchildren like they were ghosts come to collect debts. "We should go," I said, gathering my children. But Emma had other ideas. "Are you our grandmother?" She asked it so innocently, with such hope. Margaret's mouth opened and closed like a fish, gasping for air. Behind her, footsteps approached, heavy, familiar. My body recognized him before my eyes did, every cell remembering and recoiling. Julian rounded the corner in his tuxedo, every inch the successful groom. He was talking to someone on his phone, laughing at something, completely unaware of the bomb about to detonate in his perfect day. Then he saw us. The phone slipped from his hand, clattering on the marble floor. His face went through a symphony of emotions. Shock, anger, fear, and something that might have been regret if I still believed he was capable of it. "Evelyn." My name on his lips after 7 years was a wound reopening. "What are you doing here?" But he wasn't looking at me. He was staring at our children, seeing them for the first time. 3 small faces that reflected his own, 3 living proofs of the life he'd abandoned. Noah, my brave one, stepped forward. "Are you our dad?" The question hung in the air like a sword waiting to fall. And in that moment, in that ridiculous castle built on lies, truth finally found its place at the wedding. The silence stretched until it snapped. "Security!" Julian's voice was sharp, controlled. The mask was back. "How did they get in here?" But Lana held up a hand. stopping the guards who'd appeared. "They're my guests." Lana, what are you doing?" She clutched the box I'd given her, knuckles white. "Answering the question, Julian. Are you their father?" He straightened his tie, until I remembered. Julian always touched his tie when he was buying time. "This is neither the time nor place." Yes, the word came from Margaret, of all people. She stepped toward my children, tears streaming through her perfect makeup. "Yes, he's your father, I'm your grandmother, and I've been a coward for 7 years. "Mother!" Julian's facade cracked. "The agreements— Damn the agreements." Margaret's voice was steel. She knelt in front of Emma, designer dress be damned. "What's your name, sweetheart?" "Emma Rose Hart." My daughter's voice was small but clear. "This is Noah and Lucas. We're triplets." "Triplets!" Margaret's laugh was broken glass. "My mother was a triplet. It runs in families, Julian. Did you know that when you ran?" The story was unraveling faster than I'd imagined. Guests were starting to gather, drawn by the commotion. I saw phones appearing, the modern instinct to document drama. "We need to move this somewhere private," Julian said, but Lana was already opening the box. "No." She pulled out the birth certificates, the photo of Julian holding ultrasound images, the recorded USB labeled Simply Truth. "We do this here, now." "Lana, baby, she's manipulating you." "Like you manipulated me?" Lana's voice could have filled a theater. "Tell me, Julian, how many other children don't exist? How many other women have you paid to disappear?" Jonah stepped into view, camera rolling. Of course he was filming. "For the record, Mr. Monroe, care to comment on the Family Values Foundation you're launching today?" "Turn that off!" Julian lunged for the camera, but Lucas, my quiet, thoughtful Lucas, stepped between them. "Don't touch him," my 7-year-old said firmly. "That's our Uncle Jonah." The gathering crowd gasped. Someone whispered, "Is this performance art?" But there was nothing artistic about Julian's rage as he turned on me. "You signed papers. You took the money. You agreed." "To be silent?" "Yes." "To pretend my children don't exist?" "Never." I met his gaze steadily. "But I'm not the one who broke the silence, Julian. You did. On national television. You called me a liar, a trap, a mistake. You erased them completely. And you thought what? You'd waltz in here and destroy my life?" Emma tugged on my dress. "Mom, why is he so angry? We just wanted to meet him." That broke something in the crowd. A woman, I recognized her as a senator's wife, stepped forward. "Julian, my God, these are your children?" The dominoes were falling now. Phones recording, whispers spreading like wildfire. Monroe. Wedding started trending before we'd even left the building. Lana dropped the box, birth certificates scattering. I need air." She pushed through the crowd, leaving Julian exposed. He looked smaller somehow, the castle walls too big for one man's lies. "This isn't over," he told me. "My lawyers—" "Will what? Sue me for bringing your children to meet their grandmother?" I smiled sadly. "I'm not here for money, Julian. I'm not here for revenge. I'm here because Emma builds 5 chairs at every tea party. Because Noah writes songs about fathers he's never met. Because Lucas defends kids from bullies and wonders who defended his mom when she needed it." Margaret made a sound like a wounded animal. She'd been photographing the certificates with shaking hands, documenting her grandchildren's existence. "May 15th, she read. "They were born on my birthday." "I know," I said softly. "I almost called you. 100 times I almost called." The empire Julian had built on lies was crumbling in real time. Investors were already stepping away, phones pressed to ears. The Family Values Foundation was becoming a punchline on social media before the wedding march could play. But I wasn't watching his fall. I was watching my children, who stood tall despite the chaos, despite meeting their father in the worst possible way. "Can we go to the beach now?" Noah asked. "You promised." "Yeah, baby, we can go." As we turned to leave, Julian called out. Not to me, but to them. "Wait, what are you good at? What do you like?" They looked at him, my 3 miracles, and I saw them decide he wasn't worth their words. But Emma, kind even in disappointment, answered. "Everything," she said simply. "We're good at everything." Then my children walked away from their father, heads high, hands linked. The 5th seat would stay empty, but at least now they knew why. The beach was empty except for seagulls and the occasional jogger. The kids ran straight for the water, their formal clothes forgotten, laughing as waves chased their feet. I sat on the sand and finally let myself breathe. My phone had been buzzing nonstop. Jonah's live stream had gone viral. The empty chair was trending. Margaret had released a statement acknowledging her grandchildren and announcing a trust fund in their names. The wedding had been called off, but none of that mattered as much as watching my children play, free from the weight of wondering. That was intense. Lana appeared beside me, still in her wedding robe, but barefoot now, makeup smeared. She looked more human than Hollywood. "I'm sorry," I started, but she waved me off. "Don't. You saved me from making the worst mistake of my life." She watched the kids playing. "He really just left? No explanation?" "A note, 11 words. Christ." She pulled a flask from somewhere in her dress. I was starting to like her. "Want some?" We passed the flask back and forth. Two women on a beach, bonded by the same man's cowardice. "I should have known," she said. The way he talked about his past. Never specific, always the victim. But I wanted to believe in the fairy tale, you know? "I know." Emma ran up, dripping wet. There are dolphins. Come see." I let my daughter pull me toward the water, Lana following. And there they were. A pod of dolphins playing just beyond the breakers, silver bodies arcing through gold sunset light. "It's a sign," Lucas declared. "Good things are coming, out of the mouths of babes." That night, back at the hotel, I tucked 3 exhausted children into bed. They'd processed the day in their own ways. Emma through questions, Noah through music, Lucas through long silences punctuated by fierce hugs. "Are you sad he didn't want us?" Emma asked, always the one to voice what her brothers were thinking. "No, baby. I'm sad he doesn't get to know how amazing you are." "But want? You 3 are the most wanted children in the world. By me, by Uncle Jonah, by all the people who love us back home. And Grandma Margaret?" Noah's voice was hopeful. The trust fund had come with a letter, handwritten and tear-stained. An apology 7 years too late, but genuine. She wanted to know them if I'd allow it. "We'll see," I said. "People can change. Sometimes they deserve second chances. But not him." Lucas. Cutting to the heart, as always. "That's up to you 3 when you're older. My job is to protect you until you're ready to make that choice yourselves." They accepted this with the wisdom children sometimes show, curling into sleep like puppies. I stepped onto the balcony where Jonah waited with wine and a laptop. "You need to see this," he said. The screen showed message after message. Women sharing their stories. Not just about Julian, but about all the men who'd vanished when life got complicated. Single mothers holding up photos of their children, naming them, claiming their space. "You started something," Jonah said. "The empty chair movement? Women are posting pictures of the spaces left behind, the graduations without fathers, the wedding aisles walked alone. I thought about all those women building furniture for ghosts, teaching their children to ride bikes alone, answering impossible questions about absence. "Good," I said. "Maybe it's time we stopped protecting men from the consequences of their choices." A text buzzed through from an unknown number. I almost deleted it, then saw the preview. "This is Lana. Thank you for my liberation." Then another. "P.S. Using the wedding budget to start a single mother's fund. Want to be on the board?" I laughed, really laughed, for the first time in years. Not at Julian's fall or Lana's gesture, but at the strange turns life took. How liberation came in unexpected packages. How truth, once spoken, created space for something new. From inside, I heard Lucas mumbling in his sleep, processing again. Tomorrow we'd go home to Aspen, to our cabin by the lake, to our life that suddenly felt bigger despite nothing changing. But tonight, I sat with my brother under California stars and felt the chains I'd forged from silence finally break. The 5th chair would remain empty. But maybe that was okay. Maybe some spaces were meant to stay unfilled. Reminders that absence could be a gift, too. That 4 people who chose each other could be more family than 5 bound by obligation. The ocean sang its ancient song of erosion and renewal, and I listened, finally free. 2 years later, the gallery hummed with quiet conversation and the clink of wine glasses. "Spaces Between, an installation by Evelyn Hart," read the banner across the entrance. I stood before my centerpiece. A dining room frozen in time. 4 chairs around a table set for 5, The fifth chair present but wrapped in translucent fabric, visible but untouchable. The ghost at every meal. It's about presence through absence, I explained to a reviewer. How empty spaces shape us as much as filled ones. The exhibition had been Lana's idea. We'd become unlikely friends, bonding over wine and war stories. She'd used her connections to get me gallery space in Portland. The opening was selling out. Mom! Emma appeared, now 9 and even more poised. Someone's here to see you. I turned, expecting another buyer. Instead, I found Margaret Monroe, looking older but softer somehow. She'd been part of our lives for a year now, slowly, carefully, earning her place. The children performed beautifully, she said. They'd played a trio at the opening, Noah on violin, Lucas on cello, Emma on piano. Julian would... She stopped, shook her head. No, that's not my story to tell anymore. We'd learned to navigate these moments, the places where his name tried to insert itself. He'd attempted contact once, through lawyers, seeking visitation. The kids had written their response themselves. Not yet. Maybe someday. We'll let you know. There's someone else here, Margaret said carefully. Someone who asked me to check if it was okay. I knew before I turned. Some presences you feel in your bones. Julian stood by the entrance, older, diminished. The empire had crashed. Investors fled. Investigators circled. He'd rebuilt smaller, quieter. The newspapers said he lived alone now in a modest house in Seattle. 2 minutes, I told Margaret. He gets 2 minutes. I met him by the door, away from my children, my work, my life. Evelyn. He looked at the installation visible through the gallery windows. It's powerful. What do you want, Julian? To say, I understand now. The chair, the space. I've been living with my own empty rooms. He pulled out an envelope, worn from handling. I wrote them letters. Every birthday, every Christmas. Never sent them. Couldn't find the words. Words were never your problem. Following through was. He absorbed that, nodded. I'm in therapy now, trying to understand why I run, why I ran. Good for you. I meant it, but distantly. His healing wasn't my concern anymore. Could I just see them? Not me, just see? I considered. Through the window, I could watch my children laughing with Jonah, confident and whole. They'd asked about him less and less, the empty chair becoming just another fact of life, like Emma's freckles or Noah's perfect pitch. They're the ones in blue, I said finally, playing by the piano. He looked for a long moment, drinking them in. I saw the recognition, the regret, the realization of all he'd missed. Then, without pushing for more, he turned to go. Julian, he stopped. The letters? Send them to Margaret. When they're ready, they'll ask. He nodded and left, taking his ghost with him. Later, as we packed up, a young boy approached. Maybe 5, dark-haired, clutching a drawing. His mother hung back, embarrassed. Excuse me, he said to Emma. Are you the girl who played piano? Yes, she smiled, kind as always. I'm learning too. I drew this for you. He thrust the paper at her. A crayon family around a piano. His mother stepped forward. I'm sorry. Tyler's just excited. We saw the article about your family and he insisted on coming. His father isn't... It's okay, I said, recognizing the look. Another single mother, another empty chair. I have a dad somewhere too, Tyler told my kids solemnly. Mom says maybe someday he'll come back. Lucas, my protector, knelt beside him. Maybe, but you know what? You don't need to wait. You can be awesome right now. The boy beamed, and I saw his mother's eyes fill. This was why I'd done the exhibition. Not for revenge or recognition, but for all the families building around absence, filling empty spaces with chosen love. As we drove home to Oregon, we'd moved there last year, I'd taken a teaching position. The kids chattered about the exhibition, their performance, the people they'd met. That boy was nice, Emma said. Maybe he could visit sometime? Maybe, I agreed, thinking of Margaret's words about second chances, about families forming in unexpected ways. In the rearview mirror, I caught sight of the gallery growing smaller. Inside, the fifth chair still sat empty, wrapped in its ghostly shroud. But in our car, heading home, every seat was filled with laughter. The ghost had been named, displayed, and released. And we were finally fully free.